Right, so hello and welcome back to Books and Things, and welcome to another video. And today I'm going to be talking about the wonderful Victorian writer Amy Levy. So this Victober, I have read a couple of poetry collections by Amy Levy, and I loved them both so much that I thought I would make an individual author spotlight all about Amy Levy, because I think she's just an absolutely fantastic writer. So she is a really underrated Victorian writer who I really recommend. She was a novelist and a poet, and I think also wrote essays and reviews, and she was an important figure within the late Victorian proto-feminist New Woman movement. I've read a lot of what Amy Levy wrote, though not everything, and I have really enjoyed her work, so I thought I would talk about it today. And I'll start off, I think, by talking a little bit about her life. She was born in 1861 and she died by suicide at the age of 27 in 1889 after suffering with depression throughout her life. But in her short life, she wrote some incredible work, and she also had quite an interesting life. She was one of the first Jewish women to go to Cambridge University. She was a feminist. She was a queer woman. She was in love with Vernon Lee, who was another Victorian writer. I really want to read something by her as well, actually, because I haven't yet, and I've been meaning to for years. There's kind of a debate about whether Amy Levy and Vernon Lee were in a relationship or Amy Levy was in unrequited love with Vernon Lee. We're not quite sure to what extent she returned Amy Levy's affection, but Amy Levy did write some poetry about Vernon Lee and to Vernon Lee, and there's quite a lot of Amy Levy's poetry that can be read through a queer lens as about a woman in love with another woman, sometimes unrequited, sometimes not, depending on the poem. So today I just really wanted to talk about Amy Levy's works and how much I have enjoyed them all. So I will start off with her novels, I think, and then move on to her poetry. So Amy Levy wrote 3 novels, all 3 of them quite short. So there is Reuben Sachs, there is Miss Meredith, and there is The Romance of a Shop. So my least favourite novel by Amy Levy is probably Miss Meredith, which is quite a short novel, and I think probably just a less interesting novel than her other 2, I suppose. Although there is one element in it, or one way in which it is very interesting. So Miss Meredith is the story of a young woman who goes out as a governess at a family in Italy and possibly is going to fall in love with someone in that family. And as you might be able to tell from that description, I think Miss Meredith is kind of a retelling of Jane Eyre / Villette, but in a way that sort of rejects the drama of Jane Eyre and Villette, which I did quite like and I did think was quite fun. So I think Miss Meredith is really worth reading as kind of a Jane Eyre retelling, or almost like a takedown of Jane Eyre. But I feel like it probably isn't as interesting in itself as Amy Levy's other 2 novels. Then the first book I actually read by her was Reuben Sachs, which is a really interesting novel from 1888. And this book is all about the Jewish community within London, kind of middle and upper class Jewish community specifically, which is not something you read about very much in Victorian literature, or if you do, it's not from someone who is actually Jewish like Amy Levy was. And I found Reuben Sachs fascinating. It's a really, really interesting novel. It's a work of domestic realism. It has been quite a long time now since I read Reuben Sachs. I think I probably read it at least 5 years ago, maybe more, so I don't remember it that well. I would be kind of interested to reread it actually, but I remember finding it very interesting, and I do think it's really worth a read. But my favourite novel by her would have to be The Romance of a Shop, which I absolutely love. And this is the story of a group of sisters who set up a photography studio together in order to make some money after they are left penniless. And it is a New Woman novel that is full of proto-feminism, but also looks at lots of different paths in life for women. So there are younger sisters and then they have an older sister, and the older sister is quite a bit older than them and is almost from like a previous generation, and she doesn't really approve of or understand the younger sister's sort of like feminist views. And the way these sisters are kind of contrasted with each other just works really well. This book looks at what it was like to be a working woman in the late Victorian period, as well as looking at these women's romantic relationships and the other things they might want to do with their lives. And I just found it really fascinating and really powerful, and I just would really highly recommend it. This is another one I very much want to reread because it has been a few years since I read it, and it's only very short as well, and I just, yeah, really loved it and would love to go back to it. So those are Amy Levy's 3 novels, but she also wrote quite a lot of poetry, and I have read 2 poetry collections by her over the past couple of weeks, both of which I absolutely loved. So I had on my TBR for this Victober A Minor Poet and Other Verse, and then I read it and loved it so much that I immediately bought A London Plane Tree and Other Verse and then read that, and also loved that. She has another collection, as far as I can see, as far as the internet tells me, which is Xantippe and Other Verse. However, within A Minor Poet and Other Verse is a poem called Xantippe. So I'm guessing there is some crossover between the collections. So how much of Amy Levy's poetry I have read at this stage, I don't really know. But I do think these two collections are just fantastic. I have read quite a lot of Victorian poetry, and some I like and some I don't. But I feel like Amy Levy is now just my favourite Victorian poet. I also really love Christina Rossetti, and I also really love Thomas Hardy, but he's a more difficult one to categorise as a Victorian poet because a lot of his poetry and the majority of my favourite of his poems are from the 20th century rather than the 19th century. But I feel like I rarely find a Victorian poet I love as much as I have loved these two collections by Amy Levy. I just thought they were fantastic, so exquisitely beautiful, so exquisitely raw and sad in many places. You know, as I said, Amy Levy suffered with depression throughout her life, and I think when you read these collections, you can see that in her work. There are also lots of poems in here which explore love and unrequited love and queer love, I would say. And I think her use of rhythm and rhyme, her use of language, her imagery is just so excellent and so powerful. And I just really, really loved so many poems in here. I just rarely read a collection where I'm sort of like just that moved by every poem. And I just thought that was great. So I would really highly recommend Amy Levy's poetry. And I will read you a couple of poems, I think. I read a couple of her shorter poems in my reading vlogs as I went along, but I think I'll read a slightly longer one here, sort of one that's a page and a little bit. So this is Symphonia Aroca to Sylvia. My love, it was a day in June, a mellow, drowsy, golden afternoon, and all the eager people thronging came to that great hall, drawn by the magic name of one, the high magician, who can raise the spirits of the past and future days, and draw the dreams from out the secret breast, giving them life and shape. I, with the rest, sat there, athirst, a tremble for the sound, and as my aimless glances wandered around, far off across the hushed, expectant throng, I saw your face that faced mine, clear and strong. Rushed forth the sound, a mighty mountain stream. Across the clustering heads my eyes did seem, by subtle forces drawn, your eyes to meet. Then you, the melody and the summer heat, mingled in all my blood and made it wine. Straight I forgot the world's great woe and mine. My spirit's murky lead grew molten fire. Despair itself was rapture. Even higher, stronger and clearer rose the mighty strain, then sudden fell, then all was still again, and I sank back, quivering as one in pain. Brief was the pause, then mid the hush profound, slow on the waiting air swelled forth a sound, so wondrous sweet that each man held his breath, a measured mystic melody of death. Then back you leaned your head, and I could note the upward outline of your perfect throat. And ever as the music smote the air, mine eyes from far held fast your body fair. And in that wondrous moment seemed to fade my life's great woe, and grow an empty shade which had not been, nor was not. And I knew not which was sound, and which, oh love, was you. She has a couple of poems in this collection to Sylvia, and I kind of love the thought that Amy Levy could write love poems to other women, and within the Victorian world they would be assumed to be from the perspective of a man, rather than kind of from her own. Okay, I'm going to read you one other really short one from London Plane Tree. Oh, is it love? Oh, is it love, or is it fame, that thing for which I sigh? Or has it then no earthly name for men to call it by? I know not what can ease my pains, nor what it is I wish. The passion at my heartstrings strains like a tiger in a leash. I just think that Amy Levy's poetry is amazing, so there you go. I think that's mostly what I wanted to say today. I just really, really like Amy Levy as a writer, and I wanted to talk about her more, how much I enjoy her poetry and her prose, and how much I recommend her work. So do please go and look out for work by Amy Levy. I think she's really fantastic. Do let me know down in the comments if you've heard of her, if you've read anything by her. That's all for now. Thanks so much for watching, and I'll be back very soon with another Victober video.